guys, Boomslang here. I thought that we could go through the solo randomized dungeons video together, pick up on some of the points that I made in my video. So I wasn't sure if there's going to be solo ganking or not. If you go into a solo randomized dungeon, are you only the only person in there, or is there somebody else that can come in after you, or can more than one person come in after you? So I think in this video we're probably going to get that information. That was the one point that I really wanted to understand. So we'll just go through it. I'll stop and start when points come up that I feel I need to talk about. But let's take a look.
Hello and welcome everyone to this Albion Online Dev Talk. In today's video I want to introduce to you the solo randomized dungeons, a feature coming to Albion Online with the Percival update on July 10th. Today we'll talk a little bit about what are solo randomized dungeons, how do they play, and how do they fit into the overall bigger picture.
It's looking so much cooler, like the way that they're doing the design of the dungeons. I mean, for me, that kind of reminds me of like a World of Warcraft boss. You know, they're really doing some good improvements with the patches that are coming out.
Of PvE and Albion Online. So let's get right started with what are solo randomized dungeons. Well, simply put, solo randomized dungeons are the soloable version of group randomized dungeons that we introduced with the Oberon update. Similar to these dungeons, you can also find solo dungeons spread throughout the open world, but you'll be able to recognize them by their distinct portal-like entrances.
So there it is, confirmed. That's, unless they change it, that's what you're going to be looking for when you're going out into the world to try and do a solo dungeon. I think that's quite a cool artistic design. You know, it's not just like the stone and wood kind of entrances that are currently in the game, which are still cool, but I really like that. So there we go. That's what it's going to be.
These entrances exist on all kinds of tiers, and they also exist for all mob factions. So you have the same high variety of content available as.
Now I'm assuming that that's once the person has gone inside the dungeon, that appears. That's like your exit and your entry, apart from obviously pressing A. But that image there is a little confusing as to whether that's halfway through a dungeon or if that's the entrance, but I would assume that that's the entrance.
As you have in the group versions. You'll also have maps available for solo randomized dungeons that can guide you to.
There we go, guys. Solo maps confirmed, because it has the word solo in it, and that's what I thought that they would do. It wouldn't really make sense that, you know, they put time and effort into recoding the current maps, that if you're in a party on your own it opens up a solo dungeon. It'd just be easier just to make another map and call it solo at the end. You pop it, you go to it, and that's that. So I imagine that whoever gets the first few solo maps is going to control the market and make a lot of money, because everybody will want to do solo maps. So expect solo maps to be really expensive in the beginning. So yeah, something to look out for, possible money-making scenario there.
Particularly challenging or rewarding dungeons.
Oh, they've even changed the way the icon is for where the map goes. That's pretty cool.
On the topic of rewards, overall you can expect solo randomized dungeons to be roughly as rewarding as the group versions are. However, in a direct comparison, group dungeons will of course still be slightly better off, because we want to reward the effort of putting a group together, but solo random dungeons will certainly be quite worthwhile for the solo player. So now that we've talked about that, how do they actually play? Well, the solo randomized dungeons are essentially linear dungeons that have an average play time of about 10 minutes going through them.
That's pretty cool. I mean, so obviously he's saying these solo dungeons are going to be almost the same as a group one, but obviously they'll reward the group one for taking the time and effort to put a group together and to complete it. But if they're going to be 10-minute runs average, factor in travel time between dungeons, depending on if you're using maps or how long it takes you to find one. You know, you could potentially get like 3 or 4 dungeons done per hour, and if they're giving out really, really nice loot, it could be a nice new money-making way. But if they do allow one other person to come in behind you to solo gank you, I think the solo gankers are going to be very, very happy with this and probably looking for the juicy loot and all of these people running solo. So there's going to have to be some reworks on builds, and you know, you need some sustained damage, some escape. So I don't know how this is going to work at the moment, but obviously, you know, they've been testing it, thinking about it, and now they're implementing it. So it must be worthwhile. But we'll see what happens.
Within them, you can expect the same alternating pattern of corridors and highlight rooms with particular bosses and chests, but adjusted to the solo version, of course. And one thing that we've put particular...
Wow, those are pretty cool new mobs. I believe that in the new update they're releasing a lot of new mob types and reworked skins potentially, so you know, there's nice new updates coming out for the mob types, make it a bit more interesting and a bit more varied, not just the same thing over and over.
Focus on is to significantly boost the variety and excitement of PvE encounters that you can find in the randomized dungeons now. So, for example, we were introducing for the first time in Albion trap-like static opponents that add an area of effect spell to the battleground, where you have to figure out how to deal with it, or we're adding spawner NPCs, like an undead statue that keeps...
This just feels like if somebody comes in and ganks you at this point in time, you're pretty much screwed, but you know, it's part of the challenge, part of the run. But it's a cool idea, having traps and spawners, something interesting. I hope they implement that into 5-man as well.
Keeps continuously spawning ghosts until you've taken it out of the fight, or we've added a bunch of different exploding enemies to increase the challenge. We've also expanded the number of rooms that you can find and just generally the variety of the system. So both...
Wow, that is really cool. That really makes me feel like, you know, remembering World of Warcraft and... God, I can't really remember what boss it was, but that reminds me of it. Like, you had 2 or 3 gates either side. I want to say Garrosh Hellscream, I want to say. I wasn't ever very big in the World of Warcraft lore, but like the balls going back and forth whilst you're fighting him. So that's really cool. Really nice.
So both the solo and the group version benefit from all the effort that we've put in it.
Okay, so it's confirmed it's going to be in the group one as well. So that's cool, it adds a nice new challenge, and maybe in this scenario, if you are getting ganked, you might be able to capitalize on it versus just running through mobs and trying to get away, or fighting and hoping you kill them all.
One feature that's particular to the solo dungeons, however, and that's quite exciting, are the small combat shrines. Small combat shrines are effectively a type of shrine that you can find quite frequently that adds a combat buff to the first person to use it. And this combat buff can be quite beneficial in PvE, but it also can give you an edge in PvP. And especially when you think about the situation that another player...
So, if you get the combat buff and you're getting ganked, you might potentially still be able to win. If you're a good player, you're skilled, you know what you're doing. Because it doesn't matter how many buffs and how much gear you've got. If you're not good at PvP, you're probably going to die. And I'm not very good at PvP, so I don't know, that could be really beneficial, but we'll have to see how that all kind of pans out and see what happens.
Maybe following you into a solo randomized dungeon, it can be the advantage that you need as the player doing the PvE to turn the odds in your favor. So now that you know how the randomized dungeons play, what are the thoughts behind them? How do they fit into the big picture of Albion Online? Well, you can often find yourself in a situation where you don't have any guildmates online, or you don't have anyone online on that day. And this is a gap that the solo randomized dungeons perfectly fill. They give the players who prefer to play solo or who are waiting for others to come online an exciting, varied PvE activity that is also worthwhile and rewarding, and can be a primary activity for them when they're playing Albion Online. They also complete the second part of our PvE roadmap, where we want to offer PvE activities for all kinds of different group sizes. With Oberon, we added group randomized dungeons, which covers the range of 4 to 7 players quite well. Now we're adding solo randomized dungeons, which you can play on your own or in a small group of maybe 2 or 3 players. And next, after Percival's out, we'll be turning our attention towards raid dungeons. Dungeons, which you can play on your own or in a small group of maybe 2 or 3 players.
Okay, so I'm lost now, because I still don't understand how many people are actually allowed to enter a solo randomized dungeon. Because he's saying 2 to 3, but then in the random dungeons at the moment, where it's 5 to 7 recommended, you can still have like 20 people coming in behind you. I mean, we fit whole Zerg groups into a randomized dungeon with like 300 people in there. So yeah, I'd have preferred it if they locked it off to like 2 people in a solo dungeon, and to avoid maybe you taking a friend in with you, to locking it off to nobody from your guild, nobody from your friends list can enter in behind you. But then there's still a way around it. I don't know how they would really make that work, but so for me, I think it's still going to be, you could get ganked. Maybe you just have to hire a scout, and pay him by the hour. We'll just have to see how it pans out.
And next, after Percival's out, we'll be turning our attention towards raid dungeons, which will be aimed at larger groups of players and giving guilds a particular challenge. So we're super happy that we...
So raid dungeons confirmed, very nice. So that means that we're going to have like 20 plus people in a raid dungeon. It's going to be difficult. And then there'll be parties coming in and trying to gank, obviously, so it's all good fun.
We've got the solo randomized dungeons now rolling out with the Percival feature for you to explore, and one step closer to the rounded off PvE experience that we envision for Albion Online. Stay tuned for more dev talks covering the topics that are being released with Percival, and thank you for listening. Goodbye.
See ya, buddy. So that was it really. I just wanted to have a look at it, talk to you guys about it, give my opinions on it, what I feel it's going to be like. So for me, I'm not sure how much benefit it's going to be if you can still have like 3 or 4 people in there, and that means that you can still have like 10 people coming in behind you to gank you. If it was truly one person in, and then only one other person could come in behind you, that probably would have been a lot better. But obviously that's very difficult to just have you go in and then a hostile person come in behind you, because you could just go out with a mate and both of you just run the dungeon if it locks after 2 people go in. So I think they're doing it the right way, because they're not making the loot, I don't know, because with most things they'll probably make the loot so good that you'll have like 3 or 4 people running it in a group, and then they'll nerf the loot, and then you'll only have 1 person going, and then they'll still get screwed because of the amount of people that can go in it. I think it's a really good idea, but I think they will be fleshing it out over time, and updating how many people can go in, can't go in. But yeah, I just think there's going to be a load of gankers that are just looking for these really easy, juicy kills, depending on what kind of loot drops in there. But it's a really nice update, and it does mean that you can do some solo content when people aren't around. So, you know, if there wasn't that many people on, like I've got 10 online in the guild at the moment, most of them are gatherers, so I could go off and do some solo dungeons now if I wanted to, if they were out. So that is a really nice feature. And if you do solo dungeons within an area that your guild owns, so obviously if I was to do one in here and look for one, the chances of people coming down here and potentially ganking me and killing me are a lot smaller than if I just did it in the red zone where we don't own any of the territory and, you know, there's just loads of random people. So you never know. It could be really beneficial, really worthwhile. So we'll give it a shot. I'll be doing quite a few solo runs when it comes out and when I get the opportunity to do so. And yeah, I just want to let you guys know about it and see what you guys thought. One last thing, I have made the goat gang on my alt character, so I'll be doing a video to cover a bit more of that at some point. If anybody isn't guilded and does want to join it, it's not a serious guild. I won't be playing on it a great deal, but if you want to be in the goat gang as a bit of a gimmick, a bit of a meme, you know, anybody's welcome to join. And if anybody wants to build it up, you know, feel free. And yeah, that's it, guys. Have a good one all. Boom slang out. Laters.